The afternoon sun hung heavily over the Nile's golden waters as the air shimmered with heat. Tourists with broad-brimmed hats strolled across the sands nearby, blissfully unaware that the greatest conflict Earth had seen in centuries was about to unfold right under their noses. Ancient illusions and arcane energies stirred restlessly beneath the shifting dunes. And above, somewhere in the vast stretch of sky, storm clouds gathered. Lightning flickered through them, an omen of something far beyond even the oldest legends of the land. At that precise moment, Dan Garrett adjusted his red goggles, the tinted lenses giving him the signature look of the sacred scarab. Beside him, Professor Lori Hoshide carefully tucked an antique papyrus into her satchel. They stood together on a small outcrop of rock, the great pyramids looming in the distance. Dan's short orange hair was damp with sweat, and he tried not to notice Lori's lingering gaze. Their hearts pounded in anticipation. He could feel the soft hum of the sapphire scarab pressed against his belt, as though the ancient artifact itself sensed that something monumental was about to occur. The wind changed. The scorching desert air suddenly shifted into a gust that kicked up swirling sand, while an ominous glow began to suffuse the horizon. Dan's scarab pulsed in warning. It was a steady, throbbing beat that made his heart race. Lori gasped, brushing dark locks from her face as she stared upward. High above them, the skies ignited with fiery plumes. The clouds tore asunder, revealing a colossal avian shape wreathed in burning starfire. On any other day, the sight might have been breathtakingly beautiful. Yet in that moment, it was utterly terrifying, a phoenix made of living flames. Her feathers were ribbons of molten gold and crimson, trailing cosmic embers in her wake. Across the desert, archaic wards that had lain dormant for millennia sparked in quiet protest, as if warning the earth of an intruder. This was Altra Finias, the phoenix of endings, a cosmic being whose mere presence signaled upheaval in the natural order. Dan sucked in a breath as the phoenix descended, her wingspan covering much of the horizon. She let out a clarion cry that reverberated through the bones of every living creature for miles. Lori clutched Dan's arm. Even her usual Egyptian bravado faltered in the face of something so impossibly vast, so primordial. "I've read about her," Lori whispered, her voice trembling. "They called her by many names over the eons. But none of my research suggested she was real." "She's all too real," Dan managed. He pried himself from terror's grip and gently freed his arm from Lori's desperate hold. I think she sensed the conflict of this land. And Ka-Efe-Ri's meddling with life and death." Even as Dan spoke, he felt the scarab stir again, reminding him of Ka-Efe-Ri's repeated resurrections. The undead pharaoh's centuries of dark dealings had tampered with cosmic cycles. The energies binding Ka-Efe-Ri to unlife, time and time again, had created a ripple through the delicate tapestry of existence. Altra Finias must have taken notice. Lori watched as the colossal phoenix circled once, scorching the clouds. If this phoenix truly deems Earth ripe for rebirth, that means she wants to destroy everything first. Doesn't it? Her fear was impossible to mask. Dan put on a determined look. The original sacred scarab faced forces like Ka-Efe-Ri centuries ago, but never anything on this cosmic scale. Still, we have to try. He raised the scarab in front of him and spoke the words that had changed his life, Kaji-da. Blue sparks flared to life at his belt. In a flash, the sapphire scarab radiated arcane energy, enveloping Dan's body in shimmering cerulean. The transformation to sacred scarab lasted only a heartbeat, but it shook the desert air with an electric hum. Where Dan Garrett once stood, an armored champion now hovered, wrapped in the light blue jumpsuit with red gloves, boots, and belt. Red goggles glinted fiercely in the sunlight. His posture brimmed with confidence he often lacked in his civilian form. The transformation harnessed the wisdom and fortitude of Egypt's heroic past, as though all the heroic pharaohs of old stood behind him. Professor Lori smiled despite her trepidation. She had witnessed the transformation many times, but she never grew tired of seeing it. The man she admired, no, the man she loved, had become Earth's loyal protector in an instant. She watched as he soared into the air, toward the fiery wings above. On the ground, a swirling vortex of wind and heat coalesced around Altra Finias, as the phoenix of endings prepared to make her descent. Suddenly, from beyond the swirling sand, a booming voice roared, "Shazam!" A brilliant bolt of magic lightning descended from the blazing sky, smiting the desert with a crack that rivaled thunder itself. In its wake, a tall figure in red with a white cape and gold trim appeared, hovering with arms crossed and eyes blazing. Mightiest man had arrived. Billy Batson, though young at heart, had assumed his adult form. His short black hair glistened, and the golden lightning bolt on his chest shone with fierce resolve. He looked up at the phoenix with childlike awe but refused to shrink away. Despite the tension, A genuine smile found its way onto Sacred Scarab's face. Mightiest man, right on time. Mightiest man flew closer, his cape billowing in the hot wind. Dan, Lori, he greeted. His voice, deep and resonant, belied the homeless boy within. I sensed something strange in the air, like a powerful force trying to break into our world. The wizard's old teachings began echoing in my head. Then my powers just flared. Far in the distance, a black helicopter cut across the sky, its rotors churning the desert dust. That was hardly a surprise. Agent Eiling's presence could be felt even before the dark shape landed. Her job, after all, was to monitor every major heroic and villainous threat in America, and sometimes beyond. As the helicopter neared, a door slid open. Nathan Adam, codename Adam, leapt out. He wore his flexible dialustal jumpsuit, glimmering like polished silver under the harsh sun. A bright aura surrounded him, the faint swirling of atomic energy gently repelled the swirling sands. Agent Eiling stepped out right after, flanked by armed soldiers who tried to shield their faces from the raging desert winds. Agent Eiling's silver hair was pinned back as best she could manage, though stray strands clung to her sunglasses. She didn't bother with niceties as she marched up to the two heroes. "We have a problem," she said, a hint of dry wit in her tone. "A real cosmic-level problem." "Understatement of the year," Mightiest Man replied quietly. He turned his gaze skyward, where Ultra Finias let out a second cry. The Phoenix looked down upon them all, radiant eyes glowing like small stars. Suddenly, another unexpected arrival, the ground began to quake. From beneath the surface of the sands emerged a humanoid figure swathed in tattered bandages. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his muscular form bristled with ancient might. Eyes glowing red with malice, black loincloth flapping in the wind, there was no mistaking who it was. Ka-Efe Ri, newly returned, or perhaps awakened by Ultra Finias's cosmic presence. Sacred Scarab. Ka-Efe Ri's voice rumbled through the desert. The cycle repeats again, does it not? He hovered off the ground, arms outspread, paralyzing red beams dancing across his eyes. He sneered at Dan, who floated overhead in his azure armor. Fate brings us back once more, just as it always has. Sacred Scarab felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Ka-Efe Ri, you never learn, he muttered. Your pursuit of world domination is what brought her here. He pointed to the flaming bird overhead. The undead pharaoh roared. If this creature stands between me and ultimate power, then I shall destroy it. And you, Scarab, shall watch me do it. Then the world will tremble before me. He clenched his fists, swirling red energy dancing between them. But it was not just heroes and immortals drawn by the Phoenix's appearance. From the eastern horizon came a jarringly comical sight, a small personal hovercraft, rattling and belching dark smoke. Atop it, hunched over the controls, was the one figure no one expected to see actually show up in a war zone, Dr. Savannah. Bald-headed and looking every bit like a pale blue goblin in a lab coat, he brought the craft to a clumsy landing, cursing under his breath. Stepping down onto the sand, he stared upward at Ultra Finias, large black goggles reflecting her cosmic blaze. His jagged teeth were set in a tense, uneasy grin. Remarkable, he rasped, voice trembling with an odd mix of terror and fascination. Her energy signature is like a living star, a cosmic meltdown incarnate. He turned to face the cluster of heroes, Mightiest Man, Sacred Scarab, codename Adam, and Agent Eiling. His usual sneer of smug superiority faltered. This power dwarfs even my boundless intellect. The monstrous grandeur of it is, dare I say, beautiful. Dr. Savannah, Agent Eiling said with narrowed eyes, drawing her pistol. What are you doing here? Savannah slowly raised his hands. Now. We both know that gun wouldn't help you if I were truly your enemy at the moment. But in the face of that, he pointed to Ultra Finias with a trembling finger. Even I know when to call a truce. I can see you do too. Mightiest Man exchanged glances with Sacred Scarab. The tension in the air was electric, even greater than the arcs of cosmic energy swirling around the Phoenix. Eiling lowered her weapon, though she didn't look at all happy about it. We have more pressing issues, indeed. Without further warning, Ultra Finias spoke. Her voice echoed in the minds of everyone, an unearthly, melodic hush that spilled over with cosmic authority. I smell death and rebirth repeated across the ages, violations of the cosmic order. And I see mortals trifling with energies beyond their grasp. Your wars, your undead pharaohs, your hubris. Earth is ripe for cleansing. Surrender yourselves. Let the end come, so that new life may bloom from your ashes. That powerful voice sent everyone reeling. Ka-Efe Ri bared his teeth defiantly, hurling a fistful of red, crackling energy toward the Phoenix. I will not surrender my destiny. The energy crashed against Ultra Finias's fiery feathers, scattering harmlessly in sparks. She gazed down with distant disdain, as though swatting away an annoying insect. Codename Atom, with an impulsive lunge, soared into the sky. Then let's show her Earth won't roll over, he shouted. The atomic energy around him glowed like a miniature sun. He thrust his palms forward. Atomic flash. White-hot radiance speared from his hands, a concentrated nuclear lance aimed at the phoenix. It slammed into Ultra Finias's starfire barrier, and for a moment, the cosmic bird reeled. Fire sputtered. The shockwave rocked the dunes below, creating a quaking tremor that made everyone stumble. Mightiest Man shielded Lori and Eiling with his broad form. Yet Ultra Finias's fiery plumes soon coalesced again. Her cosmic flames whipped outward, a radiant swirl that battered Atom's nuclear beam aside. Foolish child, she cooed, wielding such destructive energies without understanding them. Before Atom could withdraw, scorching starfire enveloped him, sending him plummeting to the ground. He crashed into the sand, forming a glassy crater. Eiling's heart leapt into her throat. Nathan, she cried, forgetting decorum. She sprinted toward him, ignoring the swirling sand that whipped her suit. The instant she reached him, she was relieved to find him mostly intact, though his protective suit sizzled with partial meltdown. He gave her a reassuring nod, coughing slightly. I'm good, he rasped. Just took more than I could handle. Dr. Savannah stood precariously behind them, the swirling cosmic energies reflected in his enormous goggles. He looked from Ultra Finias to the battered codename Atom. The doctor's brilliant mind was calculating every possibility, every risk. That's going to happen to all of us if we don't come up with a plan, he muttered. And quickly. Ka-Efe Ri, never one for strategy, bellowed in sheer rage. The red hate energy behind his eyes flared, and he unleashed two scorching beams. I have hate, he roared, glaring up at the phoenix. Twin pillars of seething black-red power erupted from his gaze, ripping through the air with a shrieking cry. They struck Ultra Finias's chest, causing her to stagger. Yet once again, her fiery aura reconstituted. The I-beams caused only superficial damage before the phoenix rose higher, unimpressed. Ultra Finias countered with a tidal wave of living flames. All of you shall be undone, she intoned. The starfire scoured the desert, melting sand into molten glass in the blink of an eye. Sacred Scarab quickly extended a barrier of shimmering cerulean energy around himself, Mightiest Man, Eiling, and even Dr. Savannah. The scorching flames beat upon the barrier, testing Dan's will and the ancient power of the Scarab. Mightiest Man clenched his fists, bracing with his superhuman strength and power to reinforce the barrier from the inside. He turned to Sacred Scarab. We've got to do something, or the whole desert's going to become a crater. I know, Dan said, grimacing under the strain of holding off cosmic fire. But we can't just pummel her, she's immortal. We need another way. Eiling's eyes darted around, scanning the devastation. The intense heat was nearly unbearable. We need a ceasefire, she repeated in a breathless rush, remembering her mission. We need to gather every resource, every hero, every villain, every government, like we never have before. She glanced at Dr. Savannah as she spoke, and his lips curled thoughtfully. None of us can do this alone, she finished. Mightiest Man nodded slowly. There was a humility in his eyes that rarely surfaced when he wore that adult form. Then we work together. Let's call it a planetary ceasefire. Ultra Finias needs to see that humanity can learn, that we can unite rather than destroy. Dr. Savannah's mouth twisted into a conflicted sneer. A ceasefire? Ha! Fine. I'm in, he hissed. He added in a lower voice, but if I see a chance to gain something from this, I'll take it. He refused to fully abandon his villainous instincts, even now. Still, his presence, along with the presence of Ka-Efe Ri, had to be utilized somehow if Earth was to survive. With heroic might, Sacred Scarab's barrier held long enough for the cosmic flames to relent. Then the group spread out, battered but unbroken. Lori, from behind a half-buried sandstone block, called out, I've been researching a ritual from the Book of the Dead, some sort of ancient sealing rite. If we can combine that with modern energy technology, it might stop her or at least dim her enough to negotiate. She scanned the horizon for Ka-Efe Ri. But we'd need his cooperation, too. Or at least his presence. Ka-Efe Ri, hearing his name, turned his hateful red gaze on Lori. I will not assist my enemies. He howled. My only aim is to conquer this world and see you all bow before me. Enough talk. Ruh. He lunged through the air toward Mightiest Man, wrapping a bandaged fist in black haze. Fist of woe, he roared. Mightiest Man, untrained but strong beyond measure, brought up both arms to meet the blow. Their collision caused a shockwave that rattled the newly formed glass dunes. Sand vaporized under the impact. For all his enormous might, Scifi found himself straining against the champion's boundless strength. Mightiest Man grunted, recalling the wizard's teachings about harnessing the unstoppable potential hidden within him. He tapped into that reservoir, pushing forward. "You're not unstoppable," he shouted, though his voice still carried that earnest teenage bravado beneath the booming adult timbre. Scifi snarled, stumbling back. With a ferocious grin, he unleashed a swirl of black hatred in all directions, forcing Mightiest Man to retreat. "Your heroics will fail. They always do," he sneered. Mightiest Man frowned, stepping back. He called upon the thunder in his heart. "Thunderous tremor," he yelled, bringing both fists crashing together. A concussive blast of storm energy erupted from him. Lightning crackled along the sand, forcing the undead pharaoh to halt. The undead giant resisted, but the raw power behind it parted the swirling darkness. As Scifi tried to retaliate, Sacred Scarab took the opening, firing a beam of sapphire energy from his palms. "Scarab's light," Dan shouted, unleashing a brilliant wave that smashed into Scifi's flank. The pharaoh was knocked aside, tumbling across the dunes in a heap. For a moment, it seemed they had him on the ropes. But that was when Altra Finias descended again. Her eyes flashed with cosmic brilliance, and across her gilded wings, the molten gold and crimson light flared. "Enough trifling," she said, her voice echoing in the minds of all. "If you will not willingly pass from this cycle, then I shall hasten your end. And from the ashes shall arise a new dawn, one free of your meddling." Codename Adam, though still somewhat shaken, rejoined the fight, floating beside Mightiest Man. "We can't hold back any longer." He turned to the champion in red. "We have to give it everything, together." "Adam," Mightiest Man said, furrowing his brow with concern. "If you go all out, the radiation." Adam inhaled sharply. "I know the risk. But if I don't, she'll irradiate the Earth to nothing anyway. I'd rather try controlling a meltdown than guarantee the planet's doom." Within moments, the two soared upward, forming a dual assault. Altra Finias soared higher, the desert sun blazing in tandem with her starfire wings. The swirling flames formed a vortex around the phoenix, turning the sky into a swirling furnace. Down below, Dr. Savannah cackled with a strange mixture of panic and fascination, fiddling with a handheld device. "I can calibrate a particle inversion field," he muttered, "but I need time, and that means you idiots have to keep her busy." Agent Eiling nodded. "You heard the man. Everyone, buy time." She turned to Scifi, who was rising from the sands, arcs of red malice crawling over his bandaged body. "Pharaoh," she called out, forcing her voice to be as loud and commanding as possible. "I know you want to defeat Sacred Scarab and rule the Earth, but you can't rule a dead planet. Help us seal Altra Finias, and you'll get your chance at conquest afterward." Scifi's eyes flickered with rage, but also a twisted logic. A dead planet would mean no subjects to bow before him, no world left to crush underfoot. His hatred was only matched by his hunger for power. And so, through gritted, jagged teeth, he roared, "Very well. I will cooperate. For now." Professor Laurie, having meticulously studied the papyrus in her satchel, stepped forward. "We have everything we need for the sealing rite, but it must be performed at the epicenter of Altra Finias's power. We must combine the incantations from the Book of the Dead with a modern energy lattice strong enough to contain cosmic starfire." She turned to Dr. Savannah. "If you're working on that particle inversion field, that could be our modern anchor." Yes, Savannah snarled, "I'll invert the cosmic frequencies, siphon the starfire into a stable loop, like a cosmic Ouroboros. But it has to be done precisely, or we all blow up." He rummaged through the pockets of his lab coat, one of which was conspicuously empty, and fished out a small collection of transistors and crystalline rods. "I need a stronger energy source than my device can handle alone. Something nuclear, perhaps." Codename Adam heard that as he hovered above, exchanging blasts with the Phoenix. His eyebrows shot up. "You want to channel my radiation?" "Oh, you catch on quick," Savannah spat. "Just try not to die in the process." Mightiest Man and Sacred Scarab soared around Altra Finias, launching wave after wave of staggering attacks. Scarab's light battered against cosmic flames in a dance of shimmering azure versus golden red starfire. Mightiest Man, with fists crackling with magical lightning, unleashed arcs of thunderous energy that temporarily forced the Phoenix to recoil. Codename Adam flew overhead, forming a sphere of raw nuclear force. He pressed both hands forward. Adam's fury. The swirling radiation hammered into the Phoenix's flank, creating a spectacular explosion of cosmic and nuclear fire. Each time Ultra Finias seemed harmed, her body burst into an even brighter conflagration, instantly rejuvenating her. Down below, Scifi re-added his own blasts of hateful red energy, ironically fighting alongside the very heroes he once swore to destroy. If the cycle breaks, I will be unstoppable. He gloated, half to himself, half to the cosmos. With each beam he unleashed, the Phoenix screeched in frustration, yet she never faltered for long. Lori guided Agent Eiling over to a patch of half-melted sand. "Here," she said, kneeling. "We'll draw the incantation circle directly under where Ultra Finias is fighting. The Book of the Dead sealing rite must link physical matter with cosmic spirit. The place where she currently exerts the most energy is ideal." Eiling helped her unfurl an enchanted cloth, marked with archaic Egyptian hieroglyphs. Lori chanted softly in a language older than the pyramids themselves. Eiling watched in awe as glowing lines traced themselves in the sand, forming a geometric pattern of intense complexity. Small motes of golden light drifted up from the circle. The swirling dust around them took the shape of intangible guardians, reminiscent of ancient Egyptian priests. Under normal circumstances, Eiling would have been skeptical or even exasperated, but the swirling cosmic energies overhead left no room for doubt. Desperate times called for ancient measures. Dr. Savannah ran up, positioning his portable device at the circle's edge. It was a contraption of rods and cables, haphazardly assembled, yet humming with captured energy from Adam's earlier blasts. "If I calibrate this to contain her starfire frequency," he explained breathlessly, "we can force her to revert to an embryonic cycle. A cosmic chrysalis, if you will, preventing her from destroying the Earth." "I'll trust your genius for once," Eiling responded, giving him a curt nod. Oddly enough, she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, some unspoken attraction to the bald, light blue goblin of a man standing there in all his arrogant brilliance. But there was no time to dwell on such sentiments. Above them, Mightiest Man, Sacred Scarab, and codename Adam clashed with Ultra Finias in a swirling maelstrom of blazing energies. The Phoenix's cosmic shriek tore the sky apart, unleashing columns of starfire that blasted across the desert. Each time they tried to retaliate, she rose from the ashes stronger, her wings more radiant, her voice more resolute. The heat was so intense that even Sacred Scarab's armor began to shimmer. Mightiest Man, sweat pouring down his brow, shouted, "This is impossible. She just keeps getting stronger." Sacred Scarab's telepathic bond with the Scarab artifact gave him insight. "She is the Phoenix of Endings," he shouted back over the roar of fire. "She can't be killed by normal means. Each new blow fuels her rebirth. We must seal her with the rite." "Then let's get her in position," codename Adam shouted back, pushing a swirl of nuclear energy through the atmosphere. "I'll try to force her down." Far below, Lori's incantation reached a climax, a swirling mass of golden hieroglyphs shimmering above the circle. "We need her here, now," she called out. Hero and villain alike moved with renewed urgency. Codename Adam soared upward, summoning every ounce of nuclear force he could muster without incinerating everything below. Dr. Savannah's device hummed with violent energy, the rods trembling as they built up a containment field. Eiling and Lori braced themselves, chanting the final lines of the ancient text. Ka-Efe-Re, driven by both self-preservation and raging ambition, bellowed to the heavens, "I have hate." Another torrent of red beams battered Ultra Finias, staggering her mid-flight. Seizing the opportunity, Mightiest Man plowed into her from below with a thunderous uppercut. Lightning crash. His fists crackled with arcs of white and gold. The blow impacted with earth-shaking force, and for one glorious instant, Ultra Finias's massive wings buckled. A swirl of cosmic embers rained down, and she faltered, plummeting toward the swirling seal on the ground. From the other side, codename Adam unleashed a focused nuclear thrust. "Atomic Lance," he roared, intensifying the downward momentum. The Phoenix's screech echoed across the desert, splitting the air with a cosmic sorrow that tugged at the hearts of everyone, like the universe itself lamented her forced captivity. Ultra Finias crashed into the circle, and all at once, Lori and Eiling poured their voices into the final incantation. Dr. Savannah's device whirred, releasing bright arcs of coruscating light into the middle of the ring. The lines of glyphs ignited with intense brilliance, and Ultra Finias found her body pressed against an invisible barrier. The circle glowed brighter and brighter. Sacred Scarab, descending quickly, hovered just above the Phoenix. "Scarab's judgment," he roared, aiming his palms downward. Sapphire beams spiraled around Ultra Finias, weaving into the circle's lattice of golden hieroglyphs. Ka-Efe-Re, seething with malevolence, hesitated only a moment. He let out a guttural snarl and added his own red, hateful energy to the mix, malice fueling an ancient right to protect the world. It was a bizarre, poetic union of good and evil energies. Ultra Finias screeched again, starfire sputtering around her as the containment grew stronger. Let the cosmic cycles realign, Lori chanted, voice trembling with the sheer spiritual load. Let the earth remain guarded and the phoenix of endings be cast into rebirth once more. By the book of the dead, by the cosmic laws of creation and destruction, we seal thee, Ultra Finias. Light exploded across the desert in a dome of shimmering brilliance. For several heartbeats, no one could see anything except blazing whiteness. Heat and power roiled in that sphere, and everyone felt the magnitude of energies colliding in a cosmic war of wills. Agent Eiling braced herself behind a cluster of half-buried ruins, sweat pouring down her face. Dr. Savannah dug his nails into the sand, goggles reflecting swirling starfire. Ka-Efe re-howled in savage triumph, though perhaps, somewhere deep inside, in frustration that he, too, was being used for the greater good. Sacred Scarab poured every last ounce of the Scarab's millennia-old might into the ceiling. Mightiest Man hovered just outside the ring of light, muscles clenched, eyes locked on the roiling starfire that threatened to breach the containment. At last, the flare subsided. Ultra Finias's colossal form dwindled, flames collapsing inward as though drawn by a cosmic drain. She let out one final keening wail that rang of heartbreak and acceptance all at once. The phoenix's silhouette shimmered, then coalesced into a single pinpoint of radiant ember, swirling like a mini-star captured in a glass sphere. Dr. Savannah's device beeped frantically, then locked that single ember into place, a self-contained cosmic embryo flickering behind a transparent shield. The desert fell silent. The swirling winds died. The molten glass that had once been sand began to cool, sending up ghostly wisps of steam. Everyone stood in near disbelief. Ultra Finias, the unstoppable phoenix of endings, was sealed, at least for now. Exhausted, Sacred Scarab gently touched down, his breath ragged. Mightiest Man looked around with a mixture of awe and relief. Ka-Efe Re stood about 10 paces away, confusion etched across his ancient features. Well done, Agent Eiling breathed, tucking her pistol away. She approached the device that contained the cosmic ember. So, we've saved Earth? At least temporarily, Dr. Savannah said, his usual sneer returning. He adjusted the knobs, ensuring the cosmic ember remained stable. Ultra Finias is still in there. She's just forced into a new cycle of rebirth. She'll remain dormant as long as we maintain the seal. If we break it, she'll come back stronger. Ka-Efe Re spat on the ground. Fools. Even if the phoenix remains sealed, I remain. I still have the power to conquer Earth. With that, he unleashed a savage laugh and let loose a shockwave of hateful energy, lashing out in one last act of defiance. The shockwave forced the heroes to scatter, panting from the fresh onslaught. Ka-Efe Re soared upward, a swirl of red darkness enveloping him. This time, Sacred Scarab, I shall rid the earth of your meddling. Ruh. But the fight took on a new perspective now. Mightiest Man, who had been battered in the cosmic struggle, realized a deep truth: fighting Ka-Efe Re again and again perpetuated the cycle of violence. And the wizard's words echoed in his mind: nothing truly dies, everything is reborn in a new form. He soared into the air, intercepting the undead pharaoh's furious rampage. Ka-Efe Re, can't you see? He yelled, his voice resonating with the boldness of a champion but the sincerity of a child. All your repeated conquests just drew an even bigger threat to Earth. If you keep going, you'll risk bringing Ultra Finias back again or something even worse. We have to break this cycle. Ka-Efe Re glowered at him, uncertain. Your words mean nothing. Mightiest Man clenched his fist and cried out, Shazam's barrier. For the first time, he channeled a portion of the magical thunder not as a brute force but as a wide protective field, shaped by the wizard's teachings. Bolts of gold lightning spanned the sky, forming a luminous net around the undead giant. Ka-Efe Re roared, thrashing, but found himself held. The champion's eyes blazed, fueled by a flicker of wisdom he hadn't tapped before. In that moment, the unstoppable might was tempered by compassion. He didn't punch or blast Ka-Efe Re, he tried to reason with him. The impetus came not from the adult champion but the child behind that form, with a child's purity of heart. Meanwhile, down below, Sacred Scarab hovered to watch, uncertain if he should aid. The instructions from his past incarnations told him that only by sealing Ka-Efe Re in the tomb with the scarab could the pharaoh be permanently stopped. Yet doing so would cost Dan his heroic identity forever. It had been an irreconcilable conundrum that kept them locked in an eternal cycle of conflict. Professor Lori, her voice calm yet firm, called up to them, Ka-Efe Re, you were once a man enslaved, forced into cruelty by dark powers. There is still some echo of that man inside you. You can choose differently. Dr. Sivana let out a sardonic chuckle at the sentimentality, but he didn't interrupt. He was too busy adjusting the containment on Ultra Finias' ember, gleaning cosmic secrets from the device. Codename Adam hovered uncertainly. Normally he'd just go all out to subdue the foe. But this time, something in the air made him pause. Perhaps it was the knowledge that if Ka-Efe-Re was destroyed, the cosmic cycle might again be thrown out of balance. "Break the cycle," Agent Eiling said, stepping forward with her arms crossed. "I hate you. You're an undead tyrant, you've tried to enslave the earth more times than I can count, but even I see that continuing this fight might just bring back the phoenix. So stand down." Ka-Efe-Re seethed, hate blazing in his eyes. But after everything that had transpired, the cosmic threat, the uneasy alliance, the knowledge that a bigger menace slept just one slip away, he seemed to deflate with reluctant realization. "If I cannot destroy you now," he hissed, "I shall bide my time. But know this, one day, sacred scarab, the cycle shall turn again." With that, he let out a savage snarl and tore open a portal of swirling darkness behind him. Before anyone could stop him, he disappeared into the shadows. Silence fell once more, broken only by the crackling of residual energy in the air. The barrier mightiest man had formed dissipated in flickers of golden lightning, leaving him to hover uncertainly in mid-air. He floated back to the ground, meeting the gazes of the others with a mixture of relief and introspection. "I guess we did it?" he said softly, voice tinged with the childlike wonder he tried to bury under his adult persona. Agent Eiling nodded. "For now," she said. "But Ka-Efe-Re's still out there, and this Ultra Finias situation is only stable as long as we keep that ember contained." She eyed the small cosmic orb in Dr. Sivana's device warily. Dr. Sivana narrowed his eyes in a rare moment of solemnity. The cosmic order cannot be cheated. This is a lull, not a complete victory. Sacred Scarab lowered himself gently beside Lori, who looked both exhausted and elated. "Dan," she murmured, "I think I need a very long nap." Her relieved laugh put him at ease, and he let the scarab's power recede, returning to his civilian form. Dan's hair, damp and orange, clung to his forehead. He gave Lori a shy, grateful smile. "Thank you for your help. Couldn't have done any of that without you." She returned a warm smile, eyes shining. She saw in him the responsible archaeologist, the man who took on burdens that spanned millennia, and her heart throbbed with pride. "I'll always be here for you, Dan." Nearby, mightiest man felt a swirl of emotions. He was still in his adult form, but he could feel Billy's innocence flooding his mind. For a moment, he considered returning to child form. Yet the lingering dust, the watchful eyes of Agent Eiling, and Dr. Sivana's presence made him hesitate. Over the roar of leftover cosmic energy, he realized that he was still homeless, still uncertain about the meaning of life's greatest treasure. The wizard had said that Billy would be the greatest champion of justice the world had ever known, but that champion had a long way to go, a fact that pressed on him. And somewhere, in the back of his mind, he felt the warmth of Lori's motherly presence. She wanted to adopt him, but he was not ready to give up his freedom. He recognized that, no matter how powerful he became, he was still learning who he was. Codename Adam dusted himself off, the meltdown in his suit stabilized. He glanced at mightiest man, offering a half grin. "We make a pretty good team," he said, though a note of friendly rivalry still remained in his eyes. "I almost thought my nuclear blast would overshadow your thunder, but guess that old magic packs more punch than I realized." Mightiest man chuckled softly. "I don't even know the half of what I can do," he admitted. "But I'm trying to learn." Adam nodded. "Just know that if you ever need help, I'm around. And I'll keep pushing my limits to catch up with you. One day, I might just surpass the mightiest man." Dr. Sivana, who had mostly ignored the interplay between the heroes, appeared at Eiling's side. She caught his eye for an instant, and for reasons she couldn't fully fathom, her heart fluttered. She liked how the desert sun glinted off his goggles, highlighting his monstrous, pointed ears. She quickly averted her gaze, covering her momentary lapse with a brusque cough. "We'll need a secure facility for that cosmic ember," she said matter-of-factly. "Some place heavily guarded. Possibly a remote location under the U.S. government's watchful eye. Or maybe a neutral location under joint supervision. This is bigger than America alone." Sivana snorted. "I'll keep it for further study." Eiling glared at him. "Absolutely not." "Then we'll compromise," the doctor said, rolling his eyes. "But I refuse to let incompetent fools tamper with it. I might be a villain, but at least I have the brain power not to crack open a cosmic egg for curiosity's sake." "Enough," Sacred Scarab said, stepping forward. We save the world together, which means we can figure out a place to keep that device safe. Doctor, your genius could be a boon in monitoring Ultra Finias' status, but you'll do it under supervision. That's part of the planetary ceasefire. Understood? Sivana's lip curled, but he found himself cornered. Fine, he muttered. Perhaps it's for the best. Agent Eiling discreetly radioed her superiors, arranging for the neutral site. She had little trust in Sivana, but the doctor was correct, few on Earth matched his intellect. For the sake of their planet's survival, a tenuous partnership was necessary. She flicked her silver hair from her sunglasses and turned back to the group. I'll handle the arrangements. God help us all. The quiet that settled over the desert was surreal, given the cosmic battle that had transpired minutes ago. Patches of molten glass shimmered here and there, forming bizarre, half-melted shapes on the once pristine sands. The pyramids in the distance stood silent and stoic, as though unimpressed by yet another magical cataclysm. A stray breeze carried the faint scent of ozone. Somewhere in the shifting dunes, Ka-Efe surely plotted his next move, but for the moment, the threat had passed. Lori placed a hand on Dan's shoulder. You need rest. Let's get back to Cairo, find some place to recuperate. Then we can figure out what to do about the tomb and the scarab. I know you're worried about leaving the artifact behind forever, but maybe there's another way to seal Ka-Efe. We'll keep researching. Dan let out a weary sigh, nodding. Thank you. And thanks for always believing in me, even when I doubt myself. She gave him a warm smile. We all doubt ourselves sometimes. But that's why we have each other. And that's how we'll break these destructive cycles, together. Mightiest Man overheard this and gave them both an encouraging smile. He remembered how lonely it felt, bouncing from place to place as Billy, never staying in one spot long enough to form a real bond. Yet these fleeting alliances had reminded him that relationships, however brief, could be powerful forces of growth. Perhaps life's greatest treasure wasn't gold or jewels, but people, friends, mentors, allies. Codename Adam drifted over. I'm returning to base with Agent Eiling, he announced, glancing at Dr. Sivana's device with guarded concern. Just keep an eye on that thing. Agent Eiling gestured for her soldiers to gather. All right, folks. Let's move out. Debrief at HQ. She turned to the ragtag group of heroes and gave a curt nod. We may not all like each other, but we just saved the planet by working together. That's something. With that, she marched off. The Mightiest Man couldn't help but notice a lingering moment where her gaze flickered to Dr. Sivana, who adjusted his goggles with an equally awkward flick of the eyes. The synergy between them was odd, but real. Finally, only Mightiest Man, Dan, and Lori remained, standing in the swirling desert dust. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, reminiscent of the starfire that had recently blazed overhead. Dan put a hand on Mightiest Man's broad shoulder. You did well, Billy, he said softly, using the champion's real name. We couldn't have contained Ultra Finias without your strength and your courage. Mightiest Man chuckled, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. I just followed what the wizard taught me, protect others, no matter the cost. But I think I learned something new today, that sometimes, the biggest threat isn't just beating the enemy but repeating the same cycle. We always come back, stronger or not, but sometimes we never learn. Maybe this time, we actually did. Dan nodded in solemn agreement. Indeed. If we can truly break these patterns, then maybe Earth has a chance for peace. Professor Lori grinned at them both. You two are so alike, two archaeologists of the spirit, rummaging through the sands of the past to build a better future. Mightiest Man gazed at the horizon. I just hope we're ready for the next threat. Because if Ultra Finias was real, who knows what else is lurking out there? He paused, dropping his voice to a confessional hush. And someday I might not want to do this alone. Professor Lori, if you ever see me as Billy, please know, he hesitated, feeling the flush of embarrassment beneath his adult facade. I appreciate that you care about me. Even if I can't accept it right now. She stepped closer, gently placing a hand on his bicep. I understand, Billy. And I promise I'll be here for you, whether you're the mightiest man on Earth or a boy just trying to make sense of the world. A comfortable stillness passed among them. Far across the glassy dunes, the place where Ultra Finias had been sealed glowed faintly with residual cosmic power. It was a reminder of the delicate balance Earth found itself in, newly spared, newly granted a second chance. And so, the three parted ways for the moment, Lori and Dan walking back toward their trusty jeep, Mightiest Man taking flight into the sunset. In the days that followed, a phenomenon rippled across the globe. Agent Eiling called it the planetary ceasefire, and for a fleeting while, there was a sense of cautious harmony among parties usually at each other's throats. Governments shared resources to monitor the cosmic ember. Dr. Savannah, surprisingly true to his word, set up advanced containment protocols in a newly constructed facility, albeit under heavy guard. Ka-Efe vanished into legend once more, but watchers remained on alert. Codename Adam continued pushing his powers, seeking new ways to harness nuclear fury without risking innocent lives. Sacred Scarab and Professor Laurie delved deeper into the Book of the Dead, searching for ways to break Ka-Efe's cycle of resurrection without sacrificing the Scarab. Through it all, Billy Batson wandered, sometimes as mightiest man, protecting the world and living up to the wizard's faith in him, sometimes as a boy, searching for scraps of leftover goodies and hidden trinkets in alleyways across the globe. He was still seeking life's greatest treasure, but the events in Egypt hinted that maybe it wasn't something you could hold in your hands. Perhaps it was found in the bonds formed through adversity, in the lessons learned when the earth nearly ended but found salvation in unity. And Earth itself. The planet pulsed with a renewed spiritual essence, as though awakened by the forging of that ancient sealing rite. The land, though scarred by cosmic fire, gradually healed. The glass dunes cracked into shining fragments of sand. Egyptians, along with travelers from across the world, marveled at the strange crystalline fields near the pyramids, unaware of the cosmic battle that had taken place. Life carried on, because that was Earth's cycle. Destruction and rebirth, end and beginning, all woven into one. In that introspective hush after the storm, every character found themselves changed. Dan Garrett realized he had the freedom to stand against dark forces without dooming the world to another cosmic cataclysm. Laurie Hoshide grew more certain of her place in shaping the future, and maybe, if fate allowed, in caring for a young boy who was also the mightiest hero on Earth. Dr. Savannah discovered that some threats were even mightier than his overblown ego, and that forging alliances could be profitable, and perhaps quietly stirred some spark of empathy he dared not admit. Agent Eiling glimpsed that cooperation, not constant suspicion, was sometimes the best path to protect her nation. Codename Adam came to respect heroes once considered weaker, seeing the intangible strengths of unity and friendship. As for mightiest man, he learned that being chosen by the wizard was more than brute power or unstoppable might. It was about hope that humanity, in all its cyclical foolishness, could still grow and transform. And in that hope, he found a piece of himself he had never quite understood, that sometimes the greatest treasure is simply the promise of tomorrow. Earth had earned a second chance. Altra Finias' ember remained contained, no longer the phoenix of endings, but a sleeping star's spark, waiting in cosmic silence. Somewhere in the swirling cosmic firmament, the cycle continued, but so did Earth. And for the first time in a long while, each person who had witnessed the phoenix's fury carried a flicker of optimism. They had all survived together, forging a new cycle where alliances superseded animosity. Nothing ever truly died, as the wizard had taught. Matter and spirit merely transitioned, repurposed by time's unstoppable flow. But now, each of them held the knowledge that they could guide those transitions through unity, empathy, and perhaps a bit of good old-fashioned heroism. Yes, there would be future battles. There would be foes that tested their resolve, cosmos-shaking threats and petty crooks alike. Yet for this fleeting moment, the world breathed as one, cherishing its reprieve. And on an evening not too far removed from the day of the Great Sealing, under the same star-filled sky that had once been aflame with cosmic fire, Billy Batson sat alone outside a half-collapsed stone ruin. He'd finally changed back into his child form to sate his hunger, nibbling on a bit of bread he'd salvaged from a nearby stall. The desert night was chilly, but the memory of starfire lingered in the air. He gazed up at the stars, thinking about the new cosmic perspective that had cracked open his worldview. He felt strangely comforted, knowing that if the cosmos was vast and full of cycles, so too was the potential for new beginnings, like his own uncertain path forward. He closed his eyes, letting the night breeze rustle his black hair. Somewhere far away, the Book of the Dead's incantations lay dormant, waiting to be invoked if the phoenix of endings ever rose again. Dr. Savannah studied that cosmic ember, carefully plotting what it might mean for his own future. Agent Eiling compiled her reports, forging a new standard for how Earth's defenders might cooperate against looming threats. Ka-Efe nursed his wounded pride, hatching fresh schemes in the shadows. Dan Garrett and Laurie Hoshide examined artifacts by lamplight, searching for new ways to preserve balance. Codename Adam tested the boundaries of splitting himself into pure energy, seeking that fine line between destruction and salvation. All across the globe, people went about their lives, largely unaware that the Earth, in all its teeming life, had just taken a collective step closer to a brighter tomorrow. In the end, the Phoenix of Endings had become a harbinger not of final destruction, but of a new cycle of hope, because when heroes and even villains set aside their differences to save what they all cherished, the planet itself awakened, and cosmic powers found themselves halted. Peace had been bought, fragile and finite but filled with potential. Earth would always face threats of both earthly and cosmic scale. But for now, the planet spun gently on its axis, safe under the guardianship of those who had proven that, sometimes, the best way to break a cycle was to stand together. And so, under the starry Egyptian sky, Billy Batson finished his piece of bread, curled up beside his backpack of trinkets, and drifted to sleep with a small, hopeful smile on his face, knowing that tomorrow awaited, and with it, the chance to become an even better hero than he was today. The cycle continued, but so did the promise of rebirth for all.